Why are you shuffling? I like to shuffle, but this shuffling machine does the job as good as you do. You don't need to shuffle, but I like to shuffle. But you don't need to. Do I have to? Nobody said that you have to. I'm just telling you, you don't need to shuffle. Is it required to shuffle? Did I mention anything about requirements? I'm just telling you that the machine is doing the shuffling as good as you do, so you don't need to shuffle. Okay?
Trooper, are you on my frequency? I repeat, I said, are you on my frequency? Charlie's dead. Charlie's not anymore on my frequency. Is that understood?
Test, 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 test. Test, 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 test. Test, jebeni test, više te moje misli jebene. Kraj. Burden. A šta ćeš? Informacije. Par neke informacije. I neke druge stvari. Ovo tu je fakat, kažem, opet se skupilo. Ima i lijepih i ovo i ono, malo uglavnom svega. Znači, za ljubav, za početak s nečim lijepim da krenemo kao. I tu isto ima ono čuda. Znači, ono, ajmo ovo na engleskom, ono, love is selfless and not possessive. And therefore, if you wanna keep the ones you love, you have to let them go. How do you keep the ones you love? You don't. By being possessive, in contrast to selfless, which is love. You're holding love hostage. Here is also a digression in terms of offspring and the word itself, which might also call sometimes your heir. And those combinations of words which we take for granted, offspring, I don't know why they use the word off. I was thinking about the word okay. It might have something to do with, of course, but I don't know where the K came from and why they used the off or not on course. Because if you were like, I don't know, a navigator or somebody who was sailing, you would be on course and not off course. So the same with offspring. Why isn't it on spring? And does spring represent what's called like godišnje doba, like spring, autumn, winter, summer, or is it like a jumper, like a spring feather, something which is the opposite of an absorber, or I don't know, bumper, shock absorber, if it's a shock absorber, or is it really in relation to autumn? Would the offspring mean, would the opposite be on autumn, and spring represents flourishing of nature? So if there is no offspring, there is no heir, and if it's on spring, there is, or if there is an offspring, there is heir. If there is an onspring, there is no heir. Is an onspring What is it? Those are some questions I've been asking myself for the last few days, and the phenomena of parenthood, where actually just by being married, or not the process itself, but actually the process itself, not the festive part, or the, I don't know, I don't know what it's called, but it all starts with tying the knot, and those metaphors. Why should anybody who has a rope tie a knot without a reason, without it wanting to be anchored somewhere? So it's really, really selfish if you think about it. And it's imprisonment, because untying a knot is, in terms of marriage, forbidden, or represents divorce. If you love your children, and you should, unconditionally, or not the words unconditionally, also selfless, but it is sort of love being held hostage, and making a relation which doesn't seem natural, because it has a dependence and reaction and action with this relationship, which is uh, being nurtured. How those glands and frequencies make this mix, I don't know, but it doesn't seem fair, because if you hold love hostage, you cannot experience real love, because it's possessive, because you want to love your children, and your children want them to love you, or they do, or whatever. Because for me, I know there is love, but I don't correlate them with emotions, or with those with feelings. It's something different, and it's, for me, it's more diplomatic and more political, or something in those uh, terms, boundaries, rather than being it correlated to feelings. Let's move on here. Do you have something on spring? Yeah, on spring, because here I give just some examples, just to maybe inspire somebody who has a different mind, who can pick up on those terms and maybe go further. That's what this is all about. This information, which should provide someone to find something individual and unique, and knowledge, wisdom, whatever, which is very individual and subjective, but we are not the same, so we cannot take for granted that anything which anybody thinks is anything but subjective, as it should be. But there should not be no discourse, but there should be just a discussion or something like that, because people who don't search for acceptance, they can, without bias, accept different attitudes, and that's mature. Okay, here's one funny thing. When somebody, I was in a music shop this here 2 years ago. I had this. I like to buy this vintage instruments, but I don't have money, so I have to buy a lower grade or not as popular, which I do prefer because I want to have a source which isn't popular or overused, mainstream, whatever. And when I asked the guy about some instruments, I had some guitar. He told me general rule: microphone German, speakers English, amplifier guitar USA. Because Germans had this propaganda, so they developed the microphone. English had not resistance but more protest, so they didn't give a fuck. They made it loud. And the USA, which represents freedom and something new, something fresh, like rock and roll, that's where you get your instrument and amplifier. So it used to be. I was reading something on Croatian, which I don't read, nor do I have the internet. I could check some of those things, but I don't want. There was this term about the sources of the book, where the sources were taken, or I don't know, sourced out, and it was a book. It's around 100 years old, maybe more. Yeah, more than 110 years old. And I don't know if it exists or if it's popular on the internet at all. But it wasn't back then Croatian or Serbian. We have like South Slavonic, and the dialects, or they differed, and some words didn't even exist because it was beginning of typewriting. So a lot of sources use the verb objelodanjeno, and it was like 4 or 5 times on one page, and I never used that word, and maybe I haven't heard it because I don't read, and mainstream doesn't use those words, but it shouldn't as well, because now you source differently. Back then, objelodanjeno means to bring into light. So it surely has to do something with darkness as well. Another funny thing is, I was watching some war movies, and I noticed that bullets from planes, they're like glowing. They're like you can see them even if it's daytime. I don't know. That's how represented in in movies. But why should technology be visible? Because the opponent can see you better than where you're coming from. Okay, if you're like preparing a perimeter for bombing or for airstrike, maybe it's some sort of tactic in that regard, but I think it's more to it. And then we have a little bit about informatics. It's a bunch of zeros and ones. Gates close or don't close. Zero represents nothing, one represents reality, and all those zeros and ones are just a bunch of realities and nothings. And it's a melting pot, and what you get is what comes out. And it's indefinite combinations for whatever you want it, from actions to objects to subjects to universes, whatever it is. Then there was like this distillery and or distilling, which is distill. So something which is not still. Is it alive? I don't know. But you're distilling something. If you're distilling a man or a human, it's when you're distilled, a man can think, can hear himself think. I think with cigarettes it's also something along those lines, where when you inhale smoke, that's a moment where you're like totally empty and free, because that's why actually that's why I do it. Unconsciously and maybe not consciously, but also I noticed a lot of troopers and those soldiers, they always have abundance of cigarettes. So those lungs are airable, and therefore they make it real, like that, just like that. Give them to use the lungs. Now you have like gyms with enclosed spaces and bodyguards, which are huge, but in a conflict situation, they wouldn't make it to the nearest ridge, or I don't know, but, because they're just not suited for they're slow because they're heavy. They have like a lot of inertia and they're big, they're visible, they're like target-wise really bad pick. What's here with? Okay, I have something about like with Vietnam and Cambodia, Laos, Burma, Thailand. It's all been like classified and popular, so don't need to add any further. But I was really surprised that the Americans were secretly in Laos and Cambodia before they went to Vietnam. And when you think about those imperialistic countries or nations flags, when they invaded, mostly with firearms or whatever, because, or it's even predetermined or prearranged, because politicians sign agreements and propaganda do the other things. But when you have in the borders, you have Thailand, which is like British, then you have Korea, which is before, where maybe I always was wondering why did they divide them, because they divided Croatia and Serbia and Bosnia as well, which we could work together really nicely without those propagandas and those politics, because politics represent power. That's therefore I don't vote anymore, because any signature I give anywhere I support for anything, and I don't support power. But if you have like South Korea and North Korea, you have like two test grounds. You have the equipped and non-equipped, the improvised and the part where it's sponsored. So you give Smart Nation to do one thing, like a blind test with I don't know, drugs, pharmaceuticals, clinical trials, and then you get out of it, you get the radios from Motorola, you get the chips from NES, you get Microsoft, you kill Atari and other competitors, Amiga and Commodore, because they cannot afford to buy chips anywhere but from Yamaha. Thank God they have MIDI, which NES doesn't have, the physical one. I don't know where Kenwood came from and what's in Japan, but Japanese radios also seem to emulate emit frequencies, static frequencies, and static means electricity, which was resembling the pheromones for moose or some sort of deer. It's not a chemical compound, it's a frequency. And it resembles a pheromone. A pheromone should be organic um, sense or nostril sense. That's also interesting. And on the other hand, you have North Korea, which has its own internet and its own, I don't doubt, an unique informatical approach, and who knows what the hell is going on and who's controlling whatever it is. But I don't think Microsoft and those two are divided. I just think it's just a heavy Gestapo Black Ops version 2.0 scheme. Why do those military new troops call themselves companies? And where's what's a trooper? What's a troop? What's a company? And why do they have those? Why is always this? How big is this Charlie company, Alpha company, and Bravo company? If it's a company, it's like Empire, at least so it sounds. Because I always hear, what's Charlie company? Why is Charlie company so uh, present? Okay, real estate. Why it's called real estate? Because it's real. What's property and land, parcel? Okay, park and woods, hopefully somewhere, are public. Because if you have a public space, it's out of the jurisdiction of police, you can have a ranger. But at least here in Croatia, the rangers, they don't have the uh, power to, unless if they are feeling endangered, which also can be tricks, but I don't think they have the guts or the knowledge or anything besides the job itself. They cannot ask you for your documents. They can ask you, but you don't have to give them to them. They can apprehend you to the police, but I think it's a long, long way from getting busted from park ranger to asphalt where the police can't do anything. So because I don't know how it's in New York or in London. Okay, London, how it's in New York. If you're in park, what rangers, what can they do? What cannot they do? According to the constitutional rights and liberties and everything else. But it's interesting. What here? Here's something others. Here's meaningless leads to wonderful. Meaningless and wonderful. Is air the opposite of vacuum? Did the English say vacuum as well? Vacuum, yeah. Okay, then we have a vacuum cleaner. Why does it's called a vacuum cleaner if it's sucking in air? Maybe it's sucking air sucker. Who knows? The same with antennas and tails, like tails, especially from animals, and why they cut tails for animals or ears from dogs, from some dogs, because it's a cord, it's a cauda, more like a spinal cord. So we, unlike a chimpanzee, I think the chimpanzee or another type of monkey, they have antennas. Maybe they're rolled, but they're still antennas. Why do they cut the ears from a pit bull or some dog or the tail? That's also, I don't get it. Value equals is the opposite of art. One vrijednost je 1 kroz umjetnost. If it has value and currency, has a monetary value, it cannot be art. Because it's similar to this love thing, selfless possessive. Air Force, airborne. I don't know why I put it here, but I wrote state of mind. State of mind for flying, for instance. If unquestionably accepted, then it makes it real. That's why a passenger plane can lift off, and why nobody feels fear, because they believe in those bullshit physics. Which, come on, man. It's the same when you play 9-ball and the one goes in the middle pocket. I don't understand those physics. If you hit it between the first and the second ball, if it flies towards that with a little bit of screw, but with a push through, a real break. Doesn't matter. Those who know 9-ball know the one goes in the middle pocket. And now, from the movie, Sean Penn had this great role. What's it called? Casualties of War, where he shows he grabs his balls and he says this is a weapon. Then he shows the rifle and says this is a gun. He shows his balls again, he grabs them and says this is for war. He grabs the rifle and says this is for fun. And it's a lot of truth in there. So what? No buts, no ifs, no buts, but no buts or no buts. And Stalag 17, they don't allow you to bet with buts, only with false alerts. Troops, troopers, companies fight for. Do they fight for a flag? No. Do they fight for the nation? No. Or the country? No. They fight for each other. That's the saddest part. That's the saddest part, that somebody's using this. Because you depend on each other, nobody else. And that's the true about trust. That's the all in, That's real trust. That's real friendship. That's something which those, whoever it is, don't understand, nor will ever understand. Because they're mining emotions, they're mining hormones, they're squeezing it out, they're breaking you, they're rewiring you, they're testing it, they're making terror and fear. So, that's the concept of war. One thing which I don't think is coincidental. And actually, I don't know how the French got there before the Americans, but if they hadn't been there, those Viet Cong wouldn't even be in a 10-year experiment, a 10-year war. They're super professionals in what they do in their own territory. So how come nobody ever mentioned France? I don't blame France itself, but I think they have much more influence than people accredited to them. Journalists as well, and I don't know about the Emirates and Saudi Arabia, but the barrel is in dollars, so what else? Needless to say, anything else. So yeah, that was for me. What are you testing besides the helicopters, and what's going on there? It's like in Kosovo. All the bullets which were fired in World War One came out of the mine from Kosovo. They're super rich in natural resources. And now there's a peace mission where America is based and have their own facilities and airplanes and plane lanes, whatever, you know. Reminds me of those like Gestapo Black Ops or X-Files, if you remember the Cigarette Man. I had to watch it again, test 20 seasons, but now's the time. Because it was before internet. Things before internet were sourced really, really differently. And for me, that's interesting. And the Geneva Convention, Switzerland itself. I don't know about the Swiss franc, how it came alive, but it's a melting pot for all. I don't know how to say it, for all in power. Have a big border, a lot of borders, a lot of currencies. And there's actually no physical border. But that's where, in accordance or in cohesion with the Church and Vatican and diplomacy and hospitals, Red Cross, where you stack your, where you shelf your gold. You shelf, there's nothing really. It's like picking up dust every day. It's just some sort of acquisition and some sort of static value, which is just sitting and doing nothing in a vault, bank. And then you get the New World, the Liberty of Statue of Liberty, and then you have the Pentagon and NORAD, and this X-File guys, this Black Ops bullshitters, if they're human, whatever they are, Florida Keys and South Africa with Elon Musk and all those orchestrations, movies, cinema, white man's medicine, medicine for white people, with your eyes, frequencies through frames, boots on the ground. If not on the ground, two ways to be off ground. Boots. You get evacuated by plane or chopper, or you lie down in your coffin. That's also off ground. Why is it broken now? Calling all cars, all planes. But maybe it's from the war between Native Americans and the new incomers. But why is it this code word? And then we have like Viet Cong. We have an MP, military police, but we have also QC, which are also Vietnamese, but they work with Americans. What is QC mean? I don't know. But if you bomb crops, like they did in Vietnam or in Ukraine, which is the largest supplier of grain, and in Asia it's rice, the crops don't grow anymore. So you get like less food, you know. People don't get enough calories to be strong. You get nothing, you lose freedom. Because you take away the food not just for the nation but for much more people. That's it's also just one part of the jigsaw. And what does judgment represent? What does judgment represent? What should it represent? Judgment doesn't come. You cannot learn it. You have to experience unjudgment and those things observe, not being told, not right, not to read, not being told. Just use your head. You don't use your head. Just watch. Don't talk it over. And killing can be out of glory or can be out of purity. Like natural born killers, they kill out of purity, but armies kill out of glory. That's the wrong way. People who game, who play like this kinds of games, where you kill someone with a gun, it's out of glory, and it's like shotgun. It's like just a gun. It's not a weapon. You have to show your balls. Anybody can shoot anybody on a computer or with a rifle. At all, like, did it come from Sicilia, from that time, or not? Where did it come from? Because knowledge is gained and passed on. Information is fed. You're being fed information, and information is being shared. Politics are power. Your signature, your print, your watermark, whatever it is, you approve it. It's approval. It's self blackmail. Blackmail yourself, thinking you're doing the right thing, called democracy, whatever it is. Universal knowledge, universal, omniversal, all, active, intensive, but self-intensive. It's not. It's like you like to use your brain as a muscle. It's subjective. It's observational, understandable, individual, experienced, radial, narrated. It's felt, sensed. It's fun. It's inspiration. It's intuitive, spontaneous. It's not polarized. It's not harmful. Unpolarized. Do you search knowledge or do you search information? Searching is or browsing is something. Maybe browsing and searching is the same thing. Information is casual. It's given. It's what's it called? You don't have to pay nothing for it. Free of charge, not free, free of charge. It's passive, it's objective, it's popular, it's handed over, it's infused, it's constructed, it's linear, it's controlled, dosed and held, it's planned, organized, not patient, it's nervous, concluded, published, publicated, looked over, approved, checked, apprehended, given, distributed, employed, doctrinated, schooled, censored, revised, updated, checked, balanced, if it's balanced or not, non-stop, lethargic, boring, enclosed, not inspiring, not liberal or free, exclusive, non-inclusive, with invitation, invited, roped, selected. Therefore, with low IQ in terms of survival, definite and mortal and dumb, although it's not the same as stupid. But it is exclusive, non-inclusive, and it's obeyed and unquestioned and monopolar, unipolar, singular. directed, orchestrated, theatrical, cinematic, desimplified, complicated, unlike complex. It can be complex. It should be complicated, reserved, non-competent, uncompetitive, judged, as already mentioned, publicated, printed, inked, written, not convincing, educated, re-educated, evaluated with value in mind, priced, selected, agreed upon by diplomacy. It's confusing. It's marketed. It's convinced and sold, either through somebody being naive or being bribed or being enforced or being blackmailed or whatever. But through manipulation, you get to be dehumanized and empty because it's uncompromised. It doesn't allow dialogue. It's monologue. It's insulting, and consultant. So they will always use the paraphrasing or quoting. Okay, this wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. Did they skip something? I skipped a lot. Okay. Doesn't matter. What's here? Somebody told something. That's one way of putting it. Or something told somebody. Or told, whatever told can be any word. It can be ordered, it can be conducted, executed, operated, whatever word you want. But does somebody tell something, or does something tell somebody? Because here as well, popular is not the same as famous, and inspiration is not the same as influence. Knowledge is perception. Information is tiring. It is intensive, but not in the same sense as looking for knowledge or something, or trying to, I don't know how, there is no easy word which I can recall. But I know that school is tiring. And we have words like accustomed, climatized. People who live around the Himalaya, they don't go up. Why should they? You weren't there's the word climatized for it, and then you have acclimatize, or you have to declimatize, you have to adapt, you have to be corrected, you have to be changed, you have to be entitled, inclined, you have to be remorse, resolved of your whatever, forgiven, corrected, penitent, in order. At the same time, books and gold is shelved, picking up dust. And the soldier, you have like soldier or trooper, private in German. Da zapravo na hrvatskom je borac, da, warrior. A vojnik je private ili trooper, soldier. Ali kod nas, kak je rat? Rat nije ratnik, nek vojnik je ratnik, a u Americi ne treba biti rat, kak je ta riječ glupa, odnosno sumnjiva, ne? I tu sam još isto, ima tu još puno 1000 milijuna, ja fakat ni ne znam, tek sam počeo te stvari raditi, ne, znači od toga da su ti company, zašto se zovu company, ne, u ratu, ne, i takve nekakve pizdarije, i zašto su najbolji doktori za krpanje u Jordanu, i zašto u Omanu je usmeni dogovor brutalno važeći, zaš neko koristi kao pametne riječi kao justify, ne, a znači gdje u principu law, ili kako bi se to rekao, ne, ono pravo u principu ispred prirode, a priroda definira pravo, a ne obratno, ono pravo je nepotrebno ako je prirodno, ono. Ne? I onda neko kaže ono kao, izražavaš se na primjer prejednostavno, tako nećeš kažeš how do you, I don't understand, ili kao, a hoćeš ti kažeš how do you justify, i onda to zvuči kao dobro, ono, ne. I ista stvar, odnosno ista stvar, ali nova još, isto je ono, ne znam, Macao, Las Vegas, ono, Macao, valjda okreći, koliko sam čuo, 10 puta više nego Las Vegas u jednom danu, slučajno se nalazi tam gdje se nalazi, ne, ono, i pošto su ono muslimanska zemlja, u petak ne rade banke. Znači, u principu, a u Europi ili u ovim katoličkima ne radi u nedjelju banka. Subotnju nedjelju, ti imaš 3 dana za oprat pare ili za ih provući ili šta god želiš da radiš, ono, u zoni koja je, ono, pite Boga čija i ono, Bože sačuvaj.
Didn't capture everything. I don't know if I mentioned tribes, battles between tribes make sense in somehow in contrast to with warlords, companies, interests, and support and investment of countries, of flags, nations, which do have a sufficient capital and political interest, diplomacy, and conducting those New World Order bullshit. Where you have something which is announced or let's say denounced, where you denounce your child, your offspring, or your heir, your own flesh and blood, which is similar to Catholic believing by eating Christ's flesh and blood, drinking wine, and eating the hostia, what it's called. For me, I cannot relate to that. It doesn't make any sense. Why would eating Jesus's flesh and blood help Jesus? I understand there is another concept of understanding it, but me personally, I think he can rise again if you don't eat him. He's strong. He's taken it for now. He can manage more, but why should I eat him?